So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Matthew Skelton, who's CEO and founder at Conflux. So, firstly, Matthew, thanks for coming on board. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Conflux, what do you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Hi, Chris. Thanks for inviting me. It's good to be here. So my name is Matthew Skelton, so CEO, founder of Conflux. Um, my background is in technology originally, but now I generally help C-suite and senior level leaders in organizations to navigate this huge amount of technology and organizational change that's happening right now. The pace of change in technology is very, very rapid.
Yeah,
How do we navigate that with changes in capability, particularly with AI coming in, but not only that? How do we think about how we set up our organization for success with different practices, with different like shapes of teams and all this kind of stuff, skills and so on and so on for success with knowledge work of all kinds? And
right.
that's what we do at my company, Conflux, as well.
Yeah,
Um, we've actually been around for quite a long time. Like I founded the company back in 2017, but
right.
actually, so it's heading towards being 9 years old as a company. But actually, we've recently gone through a very significant kind of shift or pivot. So in actual fact, it feels more like we're about just over a year old in terms
Right.
of the new direction. So that for
Yeah.
me has been a really interesting thing to go through in the past year or so.
Yeah, sort of a rebirth or a
Mhm.
repurpose. Fascinating. So you mentioned so what would make it, just to give us an example, what would make a great client for you? You feel free to mention names or not, but what type of organization, business, what type of C-suite execs do you serve best, would you say?
Sure. So let me just give you an example of kind of organizations we're talking to right now. We're talking to a biomedical organization based in Europe,
Right?
smallish, about 250 people. We're talking to a very big and very well-established financial institution in London, and we're talking to an energy operator in North America. Um, we've done work with an airline in Asia Pacific. We've
Yep.
done work with a government in Southeast Asia, UK government. The common thread across all of these is they need help making a switch from the kind of 20th century way of working, which is in big silos, so functional
Yep.
silos. We've got the accounts, we've got the sales department over here, we've got some sort of engineering department over here, we've got something else. Moving away from that very siloed way of working into a way of working which emphasizes value flow. So,
Yep.
what value are we providing to whom? So outside the organization is like the value consumer, call them the customer or the citizen or whatever,
Yep.
rearranging basically almost all the work in the organization so it's much more aligned to flow. We're avoiding loads of handoffs from one organization to the other. And we're already doing this stuff prior to AI,
Yep.
the recent kind of batch of AI. What AI is doing is turning up the heat on the need to do that. AI is making it very clear the organizations that are set up for value flow can really use AI really well and get a lot of benefit from it. The organizations that have got loads of handoffs from one group to
Right.
another, lots of waiting and all this kind of stuff,
Yep.
they are not seeing any benefit from AI at all
Yeah.
because all the time to get to value is in the waiting between different people. So
Yes.
organizations large and small, different sectors, government, private sector, charitable sector, if they're doing knowledge work of some kind, which they all are, whether it's software delivery, it's fundraising, it's policy implementation, it is getting new financial products to market, whatever it is, historically that stuff could manage by being very slow and have lots of handoffs.
Yep.
With when cloud came along, when the cloud computing came along, that gave it a bit of an impetus. Like the
Yep.
organizations that really got on board with value
Yeah.
kind of centric ways of organizing could to take advantage of cloud very much to a huge degree. And now AI is coming along, and it's turned up the heat to maximum effectively. So all kind of organizations can benefit from rethinking how they do work effectively, how the teams are shaped, how responsibilities are aligned, and where capabilities sit. And we help all kind of organizations do that around the world, basically.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, and that's so many different types of organisations in so many different parts of the world. How do they find you, or you find them? How does that sort of connectivity
Uh,
work? If you don't mind sharing, you don't have to. Obviously,
yeah,
it
no,
might be
absolutely.
the secret sauce, so I won't.
So I was very fortunate to be the co-author of a book that's done really well. The book's called Team Topologies, and that was published in 2019. So I co-authored that with my colleague Manuel Paes. He's based in Spain, Portugal. We did some work together in kind of around about 2014, 2015, 2016. Um, and then co-authored this book. And the book, um, it landed at just the right time. Organization, we were able to kind of pull together and sort of distill some really useful practices that came out of the sort of software delivery and IT space
Yep,
from around about 2006, 7 for 10
yep,
years afterwards to about 2018.
yep,
Able to distill that. And of course, if you think about what software what we're able to do with kind of software is iterate very, very quickly. We're able to change the nature of a service or nature of an offering, a product very,
yep,
very quickly. And there's lots of because we can use digital technology to do logging and observe what's going on. We can actually test it very easily as well. So it's like
yep.
it's a double benefit. So with digital technology, you actually find patterns very, very quickly. But what's clear now is that these patterns that we described back in 2018, published 2019, these patterns that the software industry discovered effectively, things like having no handoffs, things like doing a very thin slice of value as quickly as possible, rather than try to create the whole product straight away, and all of this kind of stuff now applies to pretty much all knowledge work. So
Right,
all those patterns that we put together in that book in 2019
right.
are quite clearly now going to apply to basically all knowledge work,
Brilliant.
uh, because it's now going to be a lot of that stuff is going to be speeded up by AI.
Yep.
But if you speed it up in the wrong way, you're not going to see any benefit. You'll spend a lot of money and see very little ROI from it. Basically, so it's like what we're offering is basically say, hey, we've got these patterns. They're already proven to work in the IT industry. People are telling us that they help with AI adoption.
Right.
We're experts in AI adoption, but people are saying we're using these patterns and they're really, really helpful. And so that's our kind of like emerging focus is to help with like effective and but financially effective and kind of value first AI adoption, rather than just saying, oh, what can we use this technology for?
Yes.
It's like, well, what's the value you're trying to maybe we should
Yeah.
start with that.
I mean,
And
that makes a whole bunch of sense. So obviously, there's been a boom in obviously AI fundamentally, but the use of it in so many different ways. And I was reading something recently that said, the return on investment so far is being limited, probably because of exactly what you just said. Is that with people
exactly,
like using it for its own sake rather than using it to add value or
exactly,
create value.
exactly. So, like on the back of that, the success of that book. So the book has sold across like I think it's five different language editions now around the world. Sold more than 200,000 copies,
Oh
which for a
wow!
business book is actually quite significant, basically.
Absolutely,
Uh,
congratulations.
Thank you. And it's often down to practitioners and people and leaders who see the value. They're recommending to their friends and colleagues and things to buy
Oh,
it,
brilliant.
and it's being bought for conferences and things. So we were super happy with that, and we're very pleased with what we've done. I'm out there talking at conferences, podcasts like this
Right.
one, pretty much every week, basically, give or take.
Yeah.
So that answers your question to an extent. Like how do organizations find us? I'm it's almost like I can't shut up about this stuff, right? I'm there talking all the time, and it's difficult to in certain circles. It's difficult to miss me out. I'm quite active on LinkedIn and social media, um, but I'm there genuinely because I genuinely believe that there's a better, more humane way that organizations can run,
Yeah.
where everyone wins,
Brilliant.
customers win or citizens win, the staff win, the organization has better outcomes, is either more financially effective, or it raises more money if it's a charity, or it makes
Brilliant.
more profit if it's a private company, whatever, on
Yeah.
all kind of different measures.
Yeah.
If we have an organization that is genuinely thriving,
Yes.
where people are actually happy, then it performs better. The evidence is there.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that really, really drives me. Like, how can we create a pull towards more thriving organizations?
Look, I absolutely love it. From a big part of what I do, why I do what I do, was to help people enjoy growing businesses, not just tolerate the process, if that makes sense. And
Yep.
and it is so virtuous. It's, I don't mean I'm virtuous, but the process is virtuous because you know fundamentally people are happier, full stop. But happier people are more productive, therefore more profitable, there and probably get more done because they're more productive. So we can get there faster and happier and more profitable. And it just is a virtuous thing, is in very similar way that you've described. And I just think so many people choose for whatever reason to choose the hard way rather than the easy way.
Yes. And the hard way is composed of a few things. The hard way is thinking that growing a business is easy,
Yep.
thinking that it's really obvious, thinking that everyone is coming to it from the same perspective and has
Yep.
the same, and so on and so on. So some leaders get very kind of frustrated. I include myself in that. So a few years ago, I ended up doing some leadership coaching.
Yep.
I found a leadership coach
Yep.
and had a good more than 12 months with her, and that really helped me to change my kind of approach to work and
Brilliant.
leadership behavior and things like this. That was part of the reason why we're now actually growing Conflux as a business, because before then I was sort of holding back. I was sort of just seeing it as sort of my little vehicle, my little kind of business, almost like just for me.
Yep.
Now it's completely the opposite. Now it's a case of we are growing it as a proper startup. We've done all the market fit stuff. We've got all the right people in place, except for maybe one key exec who we're looking for at the moment. The culture's great. The leads are coming in with the
Right.
what we're offering is exactly what customers want, and so on and so on. There's a great place, and now like we're setting that up to grow in a sustainable way. We're not
Yep.
talking about like thousands and thousands of people within a year. That's just not realistic. But in a sustainable way. Um, but actually looking back at how I sort of behaved, or the behaviors that I was that naturally came to me at the time, if you like, were often not particularly helpful. And I see these kind of same kind of behaviors in some leaders in organizations that we're
Yep.
talking to or working with, because they're coming to things from with a mindset which is oh, this thing should just be really easy. We just need to push a bit harder, we'll get there. And it's no, that's not easy at all. Because
Yes.
success in this space means you need to completely change how you're doing this thing or that thing, or
Yep.
the language you're using to people who report to you needs to fundamentally change, and so on and so on. And
Yes.
it can be very frustrating for leaders who don't think they themselves should change. If they think that there's nothing for them to do, it's other people who need to change in order to get things done. It can be super frustrating, and that's the hard way. The easy way is do the work on yourself as a leader,
Absolutely.
like discover some new ways of approaching things, or understand yourself better, effectively understand what's going to trigger you in a meeting so that you don't
Yep.
go fly off the handle. And then things start to happen. Things genuinely start to happen in a way which looks like magic if you've been experiencing the hard way before.
Brilliant. No, absolutely. Bang on. One of the ways that I like to help people look at it is, like we use the phrase "life's a mirror." So a business is a mirror of its owners and leaders. So if we need to change it, we need to look into inside first. And we become the change.
Yep.
But it's not always that easy. Especially given how we're often brought up in terms of what we believe leadership is, what
Mm,
and the sometimes desire, sometimes belief that it's absolutely necessary that we're always right. A lot of people believe leadership is always knowing the way. For me, it's like accepting that I'm not always right. That's why I take advice. That's why I take support. But my job is to make decisions because a leader needs to move things forward in a direction. Hopefully,
mm.
no. in the right direction most of the time is the plan, but it's accepted it's not, and that's okay. So, uh, I mean, it's great that you're going through this growth phase, and but looking back over this time, you say 9 years, which is wonderful. What are some of the biggest challenges and issues you've had to overcome so far, Matthew?
Um, I mean, there's all the usual business growth things, usually around cash flow and
Yes.
operating costs and all these things. And yeah, I don't think any business really fundamentally gets out of those properly, unless you're insulated from those things by like VC funding or something like that. But that doesn't feel like it's almost like that's not a proper business in some respect. It's almost like cheating.
And in all honesty, you may be insulated, but they're going to be looking at those. They'll be looking at
Yes,
the drainage quite quickly as well. So
exactly the
it's
runway, exactly.
there are a few businesses I've been lucky to work with, but which are positively cash flow. So growth creates cash. In general,
Mm,
growth costs cash. I mean,
mm.
that's a fundamental. If you're lucky enough to have a business where growth creates cash, it actually is quite a cool place to be. But not many businesses have that opportunity.
So fingers crossed, that's the right direction of travel for us. We've still got to
Right,
prove it out.
right,
One of the biggest things that I had to overcome actually was to have a mindset switch myself. So as I mentioned, the Team Topologies book was really successful.
yeah,
Um, and we kind of it was just before, this was September 2019, so it was just before COVID hit. And so I did 2 trips abroad for training. I went to Canada to do some training for the Canadian government. I went to Norway to do some training for the Norwegian government. And then COVID hit, and I'd bought this massive suitcase, and I would fill it full of printed paper materials and shipping it like across, across to Toronto on that flight,
yeah,
across to Oslo on the flight to Norway. And COVID hit, and I was like, I'm never ever going to use that suitcase again. I never ever want to take an entire suitcase full of printed training materials around the world ever again. So basically, I just got rid of it, and I'm not going back there at all either. We shifted a load of training stuff online using tools like online whiteboards, things like Miro and so on.
yeah,
And that was kind of sort of useful. There was lots of interest from individuals about the techniques and the ideas and things. The challenge I had was to go too far down that rabbit hole and not see the actual bigger picture, which was like the opportunity around genuine organizational success by using the materials at scale. So initially, we'd zoomed into the almost like a B2C persona to
right,
try to meet some need around sort of individuals and learning some stuff, and then
yeah,
trying to scale it out from there, but it wasn't really landing properly. And it required me to have a bit of a rethink. Like, is there a different persona that we actually need to, whose needs we need to target? And so now we target effectively like VP of transformation or the head of HR who's leading a transformation, or whoever it is who's like driving change inside these large organizations, or small, medium, large organizations. Sometimes it's a CTO, sometimes it's head of software engineering. Doesn't really matter. Like there's some initiative happening. They've got a need, which is to accelerate that change in a way which is coordinated and where it brings people along
yeah,
without taking up too much time.
yeah,
Because you can't take people out of the daily work for too much time. It has to be kind of just enough
yeah.
so that their behavior changes into a more positive way. They can better adopt some other techniques and things. So there's a big shift. So that was one of the biggest things was to accept that effectively my previous like business focus, if you like, or the previous customer focus was okay, but it was just never going to give us the growth and the outcomes, really, the kind of genuine like positive outcomes for customers that we wanted. So just in the last couple of years, we've been shifting through to this a much better focus, and that's the thing that's really started to unlock lots of way better conversations, way more targeted interest, and way more growth opportunities effectively. So the big thing was kind of holding on to almost like the wrong thing to offer for too long.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to have gone through that learning journey. Like that's an important part.
It,
So
it,
learned
it,
a lot.
no, brilliant, brilliant. And whether it's from the challenges or the success you've had, any key learnings that you can share about growing a successful business? Anything that's really stuck out for you?
Um, the a few things. I mean, the it kind of sounds obvious, but starting with the needs of the the customer or the value consumer and genuinely really trying to understand those needs properly, building empathy with those kind of needs and working backwards then from there to work out how you need to position it, offer it, how shape it, price it, all kind of things like that just fall into place.
Yes.
If you haven't got, if you're not working backwards from their actual needs and the phrases that they actually use on the call to you and work backwards from there, then you're almost certainly going to be missing missing a huge part of what you need. Um, I was, like I said, for a long time I was trying to sell training sessions effectively, and that's not what people were really after.
Yes.
We'd run a training session with them, and they go, hasn't quite landed, and we go, oh, but actually, if we actually listen to them properly, they were asking for something slightly different. The thing that we were offering was a training session. What they really needed was something else, like more hand holding, a load of materials for them to use internally, whatever. And guess what? If you actually if you actually listen to the genuine needs of the customer and work backwards from there, then things are better. So that's my. I'm not the only one to say that, right? But it's
It's
I
worth
guess it's a
saying.
thing. If it's worth saying, if your business if it feels like you're not quite making the headway that you want in a business, take some time to genuinely like reflect on that thing. Are you genuinely properly listening to what customers actually want, or are you just trying to sell them what you've already got?
It is worth saying, but I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is is understanding people aren't interested in what we do; they're only interested in the problems, their problems that we can
Mm-hmm.
solve.
Mm-hmm.
And at a very basic level, when somebody goes in the shop for a drill, they don't want a drill; they just want a hole in the wall. So let's
Yep.
make sure,
Yep.
it's like we're selling a drill. If there's a better way to get a hold of the wall, then they'll buy that. Better, cheaper, faster. They'll buy that. They're not interested
Mm-hmm.
in actually what it is. But
Yep.
great learning. So I'm glad you've shared it because it's very easy, especially over time, to believe it's about our product rather than the
Mm-hmm.
problem that the client has. It's very easy to check
Yep.
to do that. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded like you might have one or two others, but don't. That's okay if you don't.
Um, I guess, I mean, again, I'm definitely not the first person to say this, but like just finding the right people is so important.
Yeah.
There was a big unlock we had when, so I've been working with um, my colleague who is now one of the directors of the business. But she started off doing our social media. So Carolyn Berry, she started off doing our social media. This is ages ago,
Yeah.
like as a through a kind of PA agency, and then she was super competent at that. So I said, okay, maybe you can help with this other thing, and then maybe you can help with this other thing. And I realized, to be honest, I just trust her with the running all the bank account and all of the bookkeeping stuff and all that back end stuff. So eventually, so she's gone from social media to my co-director of the business,
Yeah.
and she's effectively running big chunks of the organization. Um, More recently, we was introduced to someone who's got a huge amount of experience in IT transformation and consulting, and
Yeah.
she's effectively our COO, Renee Hawkins, and I'm actually writing a book with her, like the next book basically. So we're hoping to have
Brilliant.
some more success around that space,
Brilliant.
and finding the our CMO, so marketing officer, like Rosie Reynolds, who joined us a couple of years ago. Finding just those kind of right people, and suddenly things start to move. So like,
Yeah.
don't be what's my actual recommendation? Don't don't put up with people who aren't right. Go and find the people. Go and persist at finding the people who are genuinely right for you and for the organization and the ways of working, because suddenly that unlocks a whole lot of things.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Again, you may not be the first person to say that, but the lesson is so key. It's one of these we talk a lot about in recruitment is attitude over experience. Most traditional recruitment processes, it's about people with experience and capability. But with a base level of experience. I'm not suggesting you have no experience at all. It's all about their match of values, their match to the vision of the business, and wanting to work for and with us, if that makes sense.
Yes, although I think there's one final thing I would say, which is um, that sometimes the ways of working that are right or best inside one organization, or even the ways of working that are actually most effective in an industry, are not at all obvious to people, even though people might be really smart and switched on and they've got the right skills and capabilities and they've got the right aptitude or the right kind of fit, if you like.
Yeah,
They still the ways of working still might not be obvious at all. Like
yeah,
they're trying to do their best, but actually there's a way of working they've never experienced before.
yeah,
It might be a tool, or it might be like a particular way of working with other people or something. And so actually it's really important to make sure that stuff is that you bring it in, that
yeah,
you repeat it on a regular basis. And so that builds an operating rhythm, or it builds like ways of working,
yeah,
which actually are effective, because you can't assume, I've definitely assumed in the past that people, well, of course people will know about this way of working. I'm like, and it's quite obvious they don't.
yes,
And there's no shade on them. It's just like, well, let's introduce that
yeah.
way of working and sustain it.
That makes perfect sense. And we talked a little bit about coaching earlier, and I think you're aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know, and please rename check, but who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general, who has had the biggest impact on you?
That's a good question. Um, so like I said, did some leadership coaching with a woman called Rebecca Moore. So she was really great. But also just taking the time to work with my colleagues and learning, like expecting to learn from colleagues.
Brilliant.
And I think being open to learn from other people. It's not formal coaching, but it's almost more like self-coaching, like being aware of the dynamic in the room and what someone is suggesting and why, and
Yeah.
trying to be a bit more aware of my reaction to that.
Yes.
It has helped. So I've definitely learned a lot by being more mindful, if you like, about like what's happening inside, discussion sessions or group working sessions, or that kind of thing. Um, um, and I've done some. I did some training recently. Went on a 5-day residential. It was up in Manchester with my co-director Karen, and we did 5 days worth of basically like crash course in being a company director, and all the you can imagine the kind of detail you can get into. So it's a
Yeah.
decent amount of detail, but there's loads more to learn, kind of thing.
Yes.
So sometimes some formal training can really help, can really accelerate awareness and what to look for and so on. Um, a lot of the people who work in our organization, as it happens, have got like formal coaching
Oh,
qualifications
right.
as
Cool.
well, because that's some of the stuff that we offer as it happens,
Yes.
as
Brilliant.
part of what we offer. So actually, there's even just working on a day-to-day basis, the disposition they bring
Yeah.
is kind of coaching a little bit, or at least they're bringing a certain awareness of themselves and awareness of other
Yes.
things to the way that they work. So I'm pretty fortunate to be able to work with a lot of those people as well, I guess.
Yes, brilliant. I was listening to something a conversation recently, and I think there is an element of being coachable, and what I mean by that is um,
Yeah, yeah.
successor. In fact, it was Jake Humphries this morning talking about. Obviously, he does the high performance podcast, and
Mm,
if you've seen, but talking about one of the traits of almost all the successful people had interviewed from whatever background was a looseness. I can't remember how he described it, but a looseness of beliefs. So
mm,
the fixed mindset is a very fixed set of beliefs. This is how it is. This is how it can't be. Very difficult to change, therefore, and therefore be coached or even be open. But the more we accept that some of our beliefs may be not the best or not, means we're more open in conversations with colleagues, as you've described. Oh, that's interesting. I've never thought of it like that, because now we're only open to that if we believe that some of our beliefs may not be
mm.
the optimum, if that makes sense. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I love the phrase, the mind is like a parachute, it works best when it's open. If you'll forgive me, but
That's very good.
that brings
That's
me on
very good.
actually because I do love quotes and sayings. Do you have any favourite quotes or sayings you catch yourself using on a regular basis about
Oof.
business success, life in general? It's okay not to, but I do.
Oof. Don't know, top of my head. I find myself saying yes, start with outcomes or start with value a lot, to the point where
Great.
people must get bored of me saying it. It's partly to help me embed that in myself, to be honest, because I know that for a long time, like I said,
Yes.
I wasn't starting with that, so like I'm reinforcing it for myself. Um, um, that's probably the main one at the
Yeah.
moment.
Love it.
Uh, yeah,
Start with outcomes. Well, I mean, I guess it's not directly related, but or similar. But Stephen Covey in his book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, would start with the end in mind. Is what is the end need to look like for me to make sure.
e- exactly. There's a really useful technique that we've been using. You might have heard of it. It's called future press release. And it's a technique that the people at Amazon, the retailer, use.
Yep.
And what it is you've got an idea for something. You want to achieve a thing.
Yep.
Okay, write a press release that is dated, say, 18 months or 2 years in the future, or 3 years in the future. Depends how long it's going to take to get there. Obviously, like the thing hasn't happened. So some people go, well, how can you do that? Because it's not happened. Well, that's the whole
Yep.
point. You write it as if it's happened. So you do the mental
Yep.
gymnastics to say, okay, this thing's happened. What would it look like? What would success look like if we were genuinely like doing a press release about this thing? Oh, it would say this: we've increased the number of customers by this, or we've reduced hospital deaths by that amount, or we've increased biodiversity in England by this amount. Whatever the outcome is that you're trying to achieve, you write that thing. You talk about the people involved, whether it's like Jenny Smith or Bob Jones or whatever, or you put some real names in there. Apologies to those two if you're actually a real person with that name. And then that's your kind of target. That's your starting
Yep.
point. And you've got enough detail in there to work backwards from it. And you might not exactly hit that thing, but like it gives you such a clear picture of something to aim for. And it's a really powerful technique, because you have to make that press release real enough.
Yeah.
There has to be enough detail in there for you to be able to test whether you're succeeding or not. Super powerful technique. And there's variations of it. It doesn't have to be like a press release. It could be like a blog post or a LinkedIn post or something. But as a technique, it's super powerful and just cuts through a whole load of what ifs and we can't do that
Yep.
here and it'll never work. Well, it's just worked 3 years into the future. What must be true for it to have worked? Completely different way of thinking. And it opens up so much more. Not for everyone, but for lots of people, it does sort of get over a barrier of, oh, it can't work here. And people start thinking in more like blue sky type ways and thinking in terms of solutions rather than problems.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I mean, the third that sort of third party, it's that future. The future is in, it hasn't happened yet. Therefore, it's a place to play. I think that really helps people, especially
Mm.
including especially people that do have a more structured mindset of, well, that can't happen. Well, let's take ourselves, yeah, as you said, 18 months forward. Let's imagine it's happened. Okay, and I love that idea. And absolutely, let's look back at some of the things we've done to get to here. And it
Yep.
really just help all of a sudden it can help people. Not everybody, but different people. And
Mm.
so, and a slightly similar question, but do you have any favourite books? Well, we've also got one book we can recommend. But any books or podcasts on business or success you recommend? We'll definitely recommend Team Topologies, as obviously the number one for this conversation. But any others? And again, it's okay to not have them,
So there's a great podcast called Product Thinking,
right?
and it's run by Melissa Perry. She's based in the US. Um, and she's a superb leader in sort of product management space.
Fantastic.
But actually, she really takes a view which is above that as well. It's like almost like whole organization transformation.
Yeah,
Um, and the way that she does it is genuine and down to earth, but also really inspiring. So that's definitely worth a listen to. For if you're working at all anything in a kind of vaguely sort of digital or transformation space,
yeah.
but to be honest, a lot of stuff is going in that direction now with AI. So if you're at all working in anything that's like knowledge work inside an organization, then it's worth having a listen to some of the people on that product thinking
Fantastic.
podcast.
Product thinking. Thank you. That's really helpful. We've not had that recommendation before, so that's brilliant. And finally, on the learning front, what would you say you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far, Matthew?
I've learned that I'm actually very ambitious, but that for a long time I had some like behaviors and things that were working against that ambition. But
Right.
like I've been working through that now, and I'm in a much better place than I was. So um, I'm I'm and I suppose the additional thing I've learned is the importance of connecting through to what really is important to you as an individual.
Yes.
Without that deep connection, without that really real sense of, say, mission or what's valuable, it's hard to lead properly. It's
Yep.
hard to grow a business properly because it's too your behavior is not grounded enough. Your decisions are not grounded enough. So take the time and do the work. Like it might even need you might even, depending on your background, you might even need to do some, psychotherapy or some other kind of sessions like that, and be open to that kind of stuff if that's what's needed. But take the time to really connect to what's actually valuable, because
Yep.
that is part of the big. It like I said, it's the kind of thing that ends up feeling kind of like magic or like a huge accelerator, because suddenly
Yes.
all kind of decisions are way easier to make, way sharper, way clearer, and the right people will coalesce around that
Yep.
kind of passion and vision and conviction. Not everyone will like it, that's fine, but it's not for everyone. It's for the people who want to join you around that kind of focus.
It's the right people for us, isn't it? That's the key thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
And whether that's team, whether that's customers, suppliers, for me, it all sits around purpose and value. If we
Yep.
get clarity on purpose and value, then as you said, most decisions become no-brainers, because it's just like, does this take us closer to our purpose or not?
Mm.
But it also creates. I've always had a belief that good relationships come with a match of goals. We both want to achieve the same thing, but great relationships come with a match of values. In other words, we both think the same things that are important. And when
Yeah,
you,
I get that. Yeah.
and if you get that, it's. I think the bus idea. I think it was Tom Peters talked about having the right people on the right seats and on the bus going in the
Mm.
same direction. And I think
Mm.
the thing I sort of added to that was leaders are the guys that put the destination on the front. And if we don't have a destination, then actually what it's actually saying is magical mystery tour, which might attract some people, but they're not necessarily the right people for us.
There's another metaphor which is perhaps even more useful, because a bus is being driven by someone and no one can get off. There's a
Yes.
slightly different one where you're actually leading like a hiking expedition,
Yep.
but it's nighttime and you're leading the hiking expedition across the moorland. You
Yep.
know where you're going, which is you're going to the pub down in the valley to have a nice meal and a pint or whatever. Um, but actually, you need to have something to navigate by during those 5 hours where you're walking across the moorland, and you're
Yep.
not on a bus. Everyone's walking separately.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's in reality what happens on an organization. Like there's
Yeah.
some drift. People are walking off around the side of here, or they're going a little bit
Yeah.
faster or slower or what have you. Um, and there's someone in a wheelchair who has to go along this path instead of that one. Whatever. How are you going to navigate? And having the right kind of navigation aids, which in some organizations is like a single metric. So
Yeah.
some organizations call it like a North Star metric.
Yeah.
So you can see the North Star in the sky. It helps you navigate, and then eventually you all end up at the same place.
Yeah.
You might not end up quite there at the same time, and you're not constrained by like a bus. So there's the destination that leader needs to set, and this is some work we're doing at the moment for our customers. Is what's that navigation? What's that point of navigation that
Yeah.
helps you take each footstep effectively? And
Yes.
that's just as important, I think, for leaders to put in place as the destination thing. The destination is, oh, we're going to go for a nice meal in the pub. Great. Okay, everyone's willing to come, but how are you going to make sure they don't get lost on the way? And that's, I think, equally as
Yeah.
important.
Great. No, great point. And you mentioned the speeds is exactly right. Yeah. The bus is going at the same speed, so everyone on the bus is going. But in
Yeah.
reality, we all go different speeds. Fascinated. And you know, one of the key definitions we've got in our organisation of helping people grow what we call true businesses is a true business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works without its owners and founders. I'm keen to know what your thoughts on that is.
I think that's an important thing to aim for. There's loads of organizations that don't get there. Even big
100%.
organizations doing multiple millions a year don't get there because
Yep.
actually for some reason the founder or the owner or whoever uh, feels like they can't step away,
Yep.
doesn't want to lose control, hasn't done the leadership work to understand why they don't want to step away,
Yes.
and all the rest of it. So we're not at that point yet. I'll be totally honest. Like, but that's it's not because I don't want to achieve it. It's because it's not the right time to do it just yet.
Yeah.
But I've trying to arrange things so that I'm not in the detail of everything, trying to empower people to like make decisions somewhat autonomously and so on. But yeah, generally, like we've worked with some organizations where because the founder was still really heavily involved, it was actually causing problems. Like it was genuinely like causing like cultural problems or staff
Yes.
engagement problems or strategic decision problems. They're too in the weeds and they couldn't see the bigger picture. Um, so that's certainly our intention to go in that to go in the direction of me the business being able to run without me.
Yep.
I mean, just on a practical level, like if I'm involved in an accident or something, I wouldn't want to need to be involved because
Yeah.
this is people's livelihoods and mortgages and everything else involved. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of almost like as soon as is sensible and safe, if you like, we need to get into a position where I don't a bit need, and we're heading in that direction. We're definitely heading in
Brilliant.
that direction. It's hard for some leaders to do that if they've not got the self awareness and then the leadership sort of skills and coaching and things to let go.
It, yeah, and the other thing is fundamental cultures and beliefs, and what because we I often help people through that process, and the my belief from thinking about this and working with lots of people is we are most of us are pre-programmed by often usually our parents to say the harder we work, the more successful we'll be. It's a fairly acceptable truth, and it is a truth. Um, I think the key thing, up until a point, the challenge is once we get a business that is, when we have a whole bunch, say you can get a certain level of success with a few good people in sheer blood and guts, but once their most important resource of time is maxed out, even 10% growth is impossible if it means I've got to give 10% more time and I don't have it. But
Mm,
that's a total mindset change, I think, Matthew, for most of us,
mm,
including me, that most people, successful people's thought process is we need to get this done. What am I going to do? They think about what they do rather than how do I engage the team or the right
mm.
people to do it. So it is quite a significant change. But I heard a lady called Jennifer Burns speak a couple of years ago. So she's ex-CTO of Microsoft, going back quite a long time. So she worked
Okay.
with Bill Gates for a period, but there
Hmm.
was a short overlap. But anyway, really, really intelligent. She's now helping lots of different businesses grow, etc. But she said something, and you could almost see it was a bunch of business owners and founders in a room, and you could almost the confusion was almost like tangible because she said when in the US, when they recruit C-suite executives now, they actively test them on their ability not to do things. And you can see it was honestly, and it beat
That's
tough.
good.
It was brilliant, and it's just like and it just created that conversation. It's something I talk about a lot because it's like, right, okay, so what does that mean? Well, no, my job is who do I need, which team, what how are we going to lead it?
Mm,
And it was just, but you could honestly, you could have heard the pin drop with this sort of total sort of
mm,
mind meld going on. But no, brilliant. No, thank you for that. Yeah, it's and I use, obviously it's a definition of phrase we use in Actually Coach, but I often put in there can work without the business owner because, if there's certain parts of what we do that we absolutely love, there is an element of why we'd ever stop until we can't. Now, if we don't want the business to be dependent on that, but if you don't have to leave, but having it, as you said, it's a virtuous thing both for the business and ourselves to be able to do that.
mm.
I
Yep.
mean, you mentioned the future. What what does the future look like for you guys, Matthew, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
Well, so our aim is to grow steadily, but sustainably over the next 5, 10 years to see where we get to.
Yep.
Um, core of the footprint in the UK, but possible expansion into Europe and maybe North America, depending on what happens. We're exploring like other parts of the world too, but for now we're keeping a core to simplify the operations basically.
Yep.
Um, um, but we're really interested in expanding our impact. So yes, we want to be a profitable business because that's just like a good way to run any company, to be honest. But we're really keen about impact. So it's not just about how much money we bring in; it's about how the extent to which we're able to help organizations become more thriving and more effective. And if we do that via me giving a talk at a conference, or by publishing a new book, or by having a load of materials available, if we achieve it via another route, then we're actually kind of
Yep.
fine with that as long as we're profitable enough. So I think it's really helped us to have to reflect on what that driving mission is, and not just obsess about profit. So relatively early days, but we're having some we've had some decent success so far, and we're kind of building on it now. But genuinely, like, what would be great in 10 years time is to have a whole like catalog of stories from organizations saying, wow, the impact from Conflux and people around Matthew has been great. We've seen these outcomes. I mean, just we've got a case study that's just published. Well, a case study has gone live today from an organization in Australia. They've seen really great improvement in applying the ideas from my book. Things like shorter time to value, loads of reduced dependencies, better decision making, and staff satisfaction at 95%.
Oh,
It's
wow.
basically no organization in the world has that kind of
No,
stuff. It's immense,
brilliant.
basically, and that's genuinely like what we want to see.
Yeah,
If we can achieve like loads of those stories and have
brilliant.
decent profitable growth, then we're super happy.
Super, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And one thing I believe to be really true, and we obviously it's threading a few things that we've talked about already, is boiling it down, profit follows purpose. It, be clear on your purposes. You said it earlier, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to help people do this. The profit will
Mm,
follow. I absolutely fundamentally believe that, and see that time and time again. Follows in more, probably more quantity than if we follow profit.
mm. Yeah,
It,
time and time again. There's loads of stories of that,
it,
right?
it
With
just
yeah,
just happens. It happens
yep,
all the time. We actually
yep.
call it. We've got a number of laws we talk about. We call it the law of precession, which is often working at 90 degrees to the ultimate. The ultimate, if the ultimate goal for a business in general would be to make money, that's why it's a business rather than, let's say, a
Mm,
charity or social enterprise. But operating at what feels like 90 degrees completely at a tangent to the profit is often the way to achieve the profit. It's almost like a detour,
mm.
as you say, you see it time and time again. So that's wonderful. And if you started again, Matthew, do you start the business again? Do you think there's anything significant you do differently?
Goodness me. I think I would. Well, no, I'm not sure whether I would or not because I'm not sure I've got the personality. But I'd like to think that I would do this. I'd like to think I would go hunting for a really interesting problem to solve, and then work out if I've got the enough of the chops and the network to be able to go and solve it. I think that would be because what we've landed on is a really important problem, a really valuable problem
Yep.
to solve, and
Yep.
some big organizations willing to get involved in it. So it's great.
Yep.
If I were to do it again, it'd be like, ooh, let's go and hunt for a really gnarly problem, but that we can solve, and that would be what I'd want to approach next. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. I'm super focused on the current stuff we're doing.
Totally get that. I'm getting a feeling that might be something you do in the future,
Yes,
for
probably.
fun, which is
Hmm.
great. Which is brilliant. And final question: what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do that, Matthew?
Ooh. Um, I would say two things, like get to know, well, three things. Get to know yourself better, trust in the you that you actually are, um, and but I would also say, I think, make sure that you to have success in business or yeah, to have success in business, make sure you're really zooming into problems that people actually have
Yeah.
rather than topics which you found interesting. Topics that you find interesting are fine, and you can go a long way with that up to a
Yes.
point. But in terms of actual success in business,
Yeah.
see if you can find an overlap between stuff you found interesting at least and problems that people have, and zoom after the problems really.
There's the interesting to bring a lot of things together. There's the concept of ikigai, which you mentioned,
Yes,
which
yes,
is,
yes, yes,
you
exactly.
know,
Yeah, yeah.
one of those three things is the world needs it. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, being good
Yep.
at it and well, I'll forgive me, I can't remember the two, but the one is the world needs it. So let's make sure that
Definitely. I've
brilliant.
literally got that. I've got a copy of that book. I can't remember. It's somewhere in this office. I've literally that's for me to read next. It's a great concept from
It
Japan.
really is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Japanese. It's a Japanese sort of
Yeah.
ikigai Japanese phrase, I think, or word
Mm,
meaning that. The other one that I would imagine you're familiar with, but there's a great book by Simon Sinek called Start with Why, which I think might
exactly.
be is obviously relevant
Yep.
to a lot of conversations. Matthew, it's been
Yep.
fascinating talking to you today, and I really appreciate your thoughts and and some of the recommendations you've had, which are so relevant to many people that be watching this. And for anyone that is watching that would like to get in touch with you or Conflux, what's the best way of doing that?
The easiest one, you can find me matthewskelton.com, or if you search for Conflux and thriving organizations, you'll find us online there as well.
Brilliant. Well, look, it'd be great to swing by another 12 months and just see the next
Absolutely.
set of learnings
Yeah, that'd be
but
great.
for now, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.